Hola estudiantes, soy yo, la señora Lecky, y estoy aquí hoy para explicarles más sobre el subjuntivo. If you were not here yesterday, we'll catch you up on what you missed, and if you're not here today, hopefully you're viewing this video to get caught up on what you missed today. We're going to explore how the subjunctive can be used to talk about wishes, wants, and requests, hopes, and emotional reactions. Ayer en clase, yesterday we learned that there's two ways that you can talk about what you want. You can talk about what you want, or you can talk about what you want other people to do. So if you're just saying what you want, you say quiero plus the infinitive of whatever the thing is that you want to do. So quiero estudiar más, quiero dormir más, quiero comer más. But if you want someone else to do something, there's a different structure you need to use. So we have the example here, quiero que mis estudiantes estudien más. I want my students to study more. When we do this in Spanish, it's not the same way that we do it in English. We're not using to study, the infinitive. That verb is conjugated. The pattern that we're using is a subject plus querer plus que to connect it together. Then we have a different subject and a verb conjugated in the subjunctive. So mis padres quieren que yo salga este fin de semana means my parents want me to go out this weekend. If you look at the verb salga, that subjunctive verb is conjugated by starting with the yo form, taking off the o, and using the opposite ending. This is the same conjugation that we did when we did -2 commands. Start with the o, take off the o, opposite ending. Only this time it doesn't have to be no, no, no. There are many uses of the subjunctive mood, and the first one that we are going to be working with is when someone wants, suggests, or demands that someone else do something. This is very closely connected to what we were doing with commands. But instead of simply saying, answer the phone, it's when you say, I want you to answer the phone. I suggest that you answer the phone, or I demand that you answer the phone. One of the things that makes subjunctive difficult for us is it doesn't exist in exactly the same way in English, so we can't just always translate these sentences word for word. But we do use the subjunctive. For example, look at this. Susanna exercises every morning. In the indicative mood, I put an S on the end of exercises. That is the marker to say that this is a third-person singular verb. Susanna exercises. But if I say I recommend that Susanna exercise every morning, I take away that S. And by taking away the S, I am showing that she doesn't necessarily exercise every morning, but that's what I recommend to her. We're going to be doing something very similar in Spanish. Yesterday we focused mostly on the verb querer, but there's a variety of verbs that can be used to say that you want, suggest, or demand something. Sugerir is to suggest. Querer to want, sugerir to suggest, oh no, I put that one on there twice. Pedir to ask for, recomendar to recommend, and preferir to prefer. The yo form conjugation of these all have stem changes. Sugiero, quiero, pido, recomiendo, prefiero, and that same stem change would happen in every form except for the nosotros form. These are some really good verbs to be familiar with because we're going to use these a lot in our sentences that use the subjunctive. Here's some examples of those verbs in action. The first sentence says, Los estudiantes quieren que la señora Lackey califique las pruebas. That means the students want Mrs. Lackey to grade the quizzes. Quieren is conjugated in the normal Spanish one conjugating. We call that the indicative. Notice that it ends in en to agree with los estudiantes. Now we have our que that connects the two clauses or the two parts of the sentence together, and there's a change in subject. La señora Lackey is our second subject. Califique is from the verb calificar. This is a car verb, and we have to remember when we conjugate car verbs in the subjunctive that you're going to have a C to QU change. I also see this AR verb has the opposite ending of an E at the end of it. The opposite ending for AR verbs is E's, and the opposite ending for ER and IR verbs is A's. The second example says, Sugiero que estudies más. I suggest that you study more. Sugiero is conjugated in the yo form. The que connects it together, and estudies is not conjugated in the yo form. That means we have a change in subject. I suggest that you study more. Finally, Pablo le recomienda que Sam use la bicicleta de Lola. Remember how that worked out? Pablo recommends to Sam that he uses Lola's bicycle. So recomienda, conjugated to agree with Pablo. Que connects it together. We've got a change in subject with Sam, and use is the word that we're going to use in the subjunctive. Usar is the verb, an AR verb. We're using the opposite ending to show that it's not necessarily that Sam uses Lola's bicycle, but it's that Pablo recommends that Sam uses Lola's bicycle. In addition to those verbs, we also have some impersonal expressions. These are pretty easy to use because you don't have to conjugate anything. The ace is the only part that's conjugated. It's already done for you. So, in addition to saying I want you to do something, suggest that you do something, recommend that you do something, I can influence your behavior by simply saying it's good that you do something, it's important, it's bad, it's better, or it's necessary. So we can use all of these structures with the same form that we use with the subjunctive. For example, there's our es importante, we put in the K to connect it together, and then Ana haga ejercicio todos los días. Haga is from the verb hacer. We started with the yo form hago. Take off the o and add your opposite ending. It means it's important that Ana does exercise every day. Es bueno que los jóvenes no fumen o abusen el alcohol. It's good that the young people don't smoke or abuse alcohol. No fumen o abusen. Look at those opposite endings. Those are both AR verbs. And finally, es mejor que tú prestes atención a los errores de Sam. It is better or it's best that you pay attention to Sam's errors. Prestar's the verb. There's our opposite ending. Here we have an example that shows us the difference between using an infinitive and using the subjunctive. We talked about this yesterday too. I can say es importante tener confianza en sí mismo. It's important to have confidence in yourself. Kind of like just saying in general, it's important for one to have self-confidence. But if I want to make that a person that I'm talking to, not just in general, then I would use the K and my new subject and conjugate that verb in the subjunctive. So instead of saying it's important to have self-confidence, this second example says it's important that you have self-confidence. Es importante que tengas confianza en ti mismo. Cool. I have a special guest here. Senora Weitzel and Senora Paul are going to join me to do our very special cheer. Everybody remembers, right? I think you guys right now out there in class should stand up right now. Yeah, I'm serious. Stand up. Stand up, everybody. Let's do the cheer together. Start with the yo. Take off the o. Opposite ending and go, go, go. All right, so here are our AR verb endings. One of the things that we talked about yesterday is that the yo form and the la usted form both have the same ending. This really isn't too confusing, but sometimes when you read a sentence, you're not sure who the subject is, whereas normally we wouldn't put yo in front of a verb because it's obvious from the conjugation. In the subjunctive, you may want to put yo in front of your verb conjugation to show that it's not that I want Pablo to wash the dishes, it's that my mom wants me to wash the dishes. Here's our endings for the ER, IR verbs. Again, when we say opposite ending, what we mean is that instead of E's at the end of these endings, we're going to use A's. So in Spanish, E is the opposite of A, and A is the opposite of E and I. One other kind of verb that you're probably going to want to use is a verb ending in car, gar, or zar. These are going to have their spelling changes in all forms of the subjunctive. For example, any verb that ends in car, like buscar, is going to have a QU. So busque, busques, busque, busquemos, busquen. All throughout, we're going to use that QU, just like we did in the preterite, just like we did in our negative 2 commands. Here, this gar verb is going to change G to GU. When we do that, what we're doing is preserving the original sound of the infinitive. G has two different sounds, a hard G and a soft G sound. So this GU is making the G in pague sound just like it did in pagar. If we took away that U, it would be paje, and the G would sound more like an H. So that's why we're putting the extra U. Finally, because they do not like the ZE combination in Spanish, we will change all of our ZE possibilities into CE, thereby avoiding Z and E together. Fortunately, there are very few irregular verbs in the subjunctive. Dar is not very irregular at all. We're still basically using the opposite endings, but the reason why this is classified as irregular is because the yo form doi does not end in an O, so you can't take off the O, you can't follow the cheer. One other thing to note about the verb dar is that there are accent marks on day. Anybody have a guess why there's an accent mark on day? What does day mean if you leave off the accent mark? That's right, those accent marks are there so you don't confuse this day with the day that means of or from. Ir, meaning to go, is an irregular that's really important. A lot of you used this verb in your examples yesterday. Vaya is what we're going to do. It's a totally irregular verb, so you have to memorize it. Don't forget this one because you're definitely going to want to use it. We have a lot of words in our chapter that we can use with the verb ser because we have all kinds of ways of describing people. So this verb sea is also one that I would recommend that you remember. Finally, much like dar, a star is not completely irregular. We still have the same basic opposite ending idea, and we have some extra accent marks to worry about, though. Enough of all that conjugating, though. Let's get on to some examples. All right, everybody, turn to your partner, whoever's sitting next to you, and tell them, what does this sentence mean? All right, if you said, it's necessary that Pablo finds a job, he wants to work as a double, you are correct. That double, remember, means a stuntman. All right, what about this one? Whoever didn't speak last time, tell your partner what this means in English. All right, if you told your partner, I recommend that you practice the conjugations on the computer, you were correct. Notice that te in front of the recomiendo. Instead of just saying I recommend, this really means I recommend to you that you practice the conjugations on the computer. All right, I'm going to go through the next few examples a little more quickly. Es importante que, it means it's important that. Here we're using the verb vestirse to get dressed. It's a stem-changing IR verb, so it becomes Sam se vista. Es importante que Sam se vista en ropa normal. Recomiendo que Lola sea menos egoísta. Isn't this true? I recommend that Lola be less selfish. Para aprender español, es importante que Sam compre Rosetta Stone. In order to learn Spanish, it's important that Sam buys Rosetta Stone. So our pattern's always the same. We have either es importante que, es necesario que, es bueno que, one of our impersonal expressions, or a verb like quiero or recomiendo or sugiero, a verb that's conjugated with one subject, then a que, then a change in subject and the verb in the subjunctive. Sugiero que Ana salga con Pablo. I suggest that Ana goes out with Pablo. One more example. This one says, La sargento pide que los jóvenes sigan las reglas. The owner or the sergeant, the landlady, asks that the young people follow the rules. Sigan is from the verb seguir, to follow. The yo form is sigo, and that's where we got sigan from. So this is the kind of sentence that you're going to be writing tomorrow on your quiz, and we'll talk more about that later. You may have been thinking that the only use of the subjunctive was to talk about what you want other people to do. That is not true. We are going to learn 2 more uses of the subjunctive before this video is over. And the first one is super easy. We get to use 2 of our vocab terms from this chapter. When you talk about your hopes, you're going to use the subjunctive. So look at this first sentence, ojalá que. Remember, ojalá means hopefully. Ojalá que los jóvenes, that is a mistake. It should say los jóvenes with an es at the end of it. Ojalá que los jóvenes tengan una amistad fuerte. What that means is hopefully these young people have or will have a strong friendship. The subjunctive can actually be used for the future or the present, and so you can interpret it either way. The next example says, mis amigos esperan que yo tenga éxito. My friends hope that I am successful, that I have success. Again, it could be in the future or it could be right now. Ojalá, by the way, is not a verb. You don't conjugate it or put a subject in front of it. It just means hopefully. Esperar, on the other hand, is a verb. You should conjugate it to agree with whatever subject you choose. Espero, esperas, espera. All right, this is the final use that you're going to learn in Spanish 3, and we'll add a whole bunch more stuff in Spanish 4 about how to use the subjunctive. So we've already had that you can use the subjunctive about what you want someone else to do, what you hope someone else will do, and the last use is when you are showing an emotional reaction to a situation. This should look familiar because it is a screenshot of our Quizlet set. I just added this set last night to your group for Quizlet, so you can find this and practice with it. It is called Words of Emotion that trigger the subjunctive. Trigger the subjunctive means when you see this in the beginning of the sentence, you know that you're going to use the subjunctive for the end of your sentence. So our first one here is triste que, means it's sad that. So if I wanted to say that it's sad that we don't have a quiz today, I would say es triste que no tengamos una prueba hoy. And tengamos would be in the subjunctive. Es una lástima que means it's a shame that. Me alegro de que, I'm glad that. The verb here is alegrarse, and it is a reflexive verb, so you can make it me alegro, te alegra, se alegra, nos alegramos, se alegran. It's interesting that it has the de que in it, a little different than the other verbs. Me enoja que means it makes me mad that. This time the conjugation is not me enojo, not I make myself mad, but it makes me mad. It's kind of like the verb gustar. So we have enoja for it angers, and then the me before it for me. It makes me mad, it angers me. Me molesta que works in a very similar way. Molestar means to bother, so me molesta means it bothers me. Same thing with me preocupa que. Preocupar is to worry. Me preocupa, it worries me. And sorprender. Sorprender is to surprise, so me sorprende que, it surprises me. Siento que means I'm sorry. Temo que, I fear. And tengo miedo de que, I'm scared that. So a few more examples of using those emotional reactions. If I just say mis amigos mienten, I'm stating a fact. My friends lie. But once I put something in front of it, like es triste que mis amigos mientan, I'm going to have an emotional reaction. So I'm not going to simply say mienten. I'm going to change that to the opposite ending. It shows that I'm having an emotional reaction to this fact, not just stating it as a fact. No tenemos prueba hoy, simple statement of fact. But me alegro de que no tengamos prueba hoy is my emotional reaction. Hace mucho calor. It's very hot. What about me sorprende que haga mucho calor? At this time we're saying it surprises me that it's so hot. So we're using the subjunctive to show that there's an emotional reaction. Finally, la señora Lecky es simpática. If we put something in front of it like es fantástico que, then we're going to use sea simpática to show that we're giving this statement an emotional reaction. Notice the pattern stays the same. We have some kind of subjunctive trigger at that part that's underlined. Don't forget about the que to connect our sentence together. And there's always a change in subject with a verb conjugated in the subjunctive. Start with the O, take off the O, opposite ending. At this point, it would be a great idea to pause the video briefly to pass out the practice quiz. Let's look at what the practice quiz is going to look like. On the practice quiz, you have a scoring guide with 3 different pieces I will be looking for. The first is your subjunctive forms. Remember, you're starting with the O, taking off the O, opposite ending. You might choose to use a cargar-zar verb or a stem-changing verb, so those little changes should be reflected as well. You also will need to use some subjunctive triggers. I'll give you the English to help you remember them, but you have to be able to come up with at least 6 subjunctive triggers on your own. Spell them correctly, use them correctly, and finally the sentence structure. Part of this is that your sentence makes sense, but it's also about having that que to connect together your 2 ideas, and that you're going to have a change in subject. You can't say quiero que yo vaya, because that would just be quiero ir. You have to say quiero que somebody else vaya. Change in subject on all of your sentences. I will give you these prompts to help you, and you'll have this to use as a word bank. Now, you're going to be writing only 6 sentences. So this is a lot of examples. It looks like 20 different subjunctive triggers that you can choose from. You only need to know 6 of them for your quiz. And there's some verbs that I'm just going to give you there, some infinitives, and that'll get you started on thinking about what you want to write in your sentences. As you can see on the back, some of the subjects are people from the extra video series, but some of them are also about you and your friends. So all you're going to do is start with the subject, like Pablo. You can start with your verb. Definitely one of the ones I'm sure you'll choose will be querer. So in this case, we'd say Pablo quiere. Don't forget your que, and then choose a different subject for the second part of your sentence. For example, Pablo quiere que Ana salga con él, which would mean Pablo wants Ana to go out with him. This slide will help you put everything together so you can get an advanced score on your quiz. The formula is to have a subject plus querer, or a similar verb like sugerir, recomendar, then a que, then a different subject plus a verb in the subjunctive. All that together is going to add up to an awesome sentence. Remember, another option is to use those impersonal expressions like es importante que, es necesario que, es bueno que, es malo que. On those, you can cross out on your quiz the subject. So instead of saying Sam es importante, which would simply mean Sam is important, cross off Sam and start your sentence with es importante que, es triste que, etc. then a subject and a verb in the subjunctive. All right, to wrap it up, this is our last piece. On the left, it says that we're going to use the subjunctive to give someone advice, to make requests of others, to express hopes and desires about others, and use a verb that expresses advice, hope, or request, plus que, plus the subjunctive. Quiero que vayas al rastro, espero que encuentres algunos estantes, or te recomiendo que llegues temprano, porque hay mucha gente. On the other side, it says if you're going to express what you want for yourself, or what other people want for themselves, and there's not a change in subject, just use a verb that expresses desire or hope, plus the infinitive. Quiero ir al rastro, espero encontrar algunos estantes, or pienso llegar temprano, porque hay mucha gente. If you guys want to go back and watch this again, there will be a link on my website, so click on Spanish 3 under Senora Kim Lackey's website, and you will be able to watch this all again, so that you can be a master of the subjunctive. Buena suerte!